What's up? Welcome in to the CHGO Bears Podcast presented by PointsBet. Use code CHGO to live your bet life and get up to $2,000 in free bets. What's going on? Another happy hour Friday edition of CHGO Bears with Nicholas Moriano still on vacation. Will DeWitt is back today, finishing a full week with us. Will, it's been fun, and let's close it out strong today.
Hey, I love the plan. It has been a great time joining you all week long throughout the show, whether it be in studio, hopping in the DeLorean with you midweek, and of course, wrapping up here remotely. It's been a time, and it's good to get a little bit of an insight of, I guess, the grind it is to do 5 shows every single week.
Yeah, it's not that much of a grind, but it is a little, especially this time of year. You got to plan, you got to come up with stuff, and I think we've done a great job of that. So hopefully people have enjoyed the week and everything we've had. And some nice comments from Kay Johnson I was just reading. He just said, just want to say really proud of Nick, Will, and even Mason. I remember watching them while they did their pods from the dorm rooms / bedrooms. Love to see the growth, fellas. Bear down, Chicago. Also been a longtime fan of Hoge and John's as well. So crazy to see the Chicago Audible and Hoge and John's mash up. Keep doing your things, guys. CHGO has been dropping great Chicago vids. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Kay Johnson, great way to start this Friday show. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a good way to start happy hour. Those are the positive vibes. And I think today, more than most days, are days that we need them because it's been a hell of a morning, to say the least.
Not exactly a banner day for our country. So I got my Chicago Sky shirt on today. Once again, we wore the same color, little different shades of the blue, but without planning that, I think you and I mastered that this week as well.
I think so. What color shorts were with the blue? I must know if you're wearing any.
Probably the same caramel shorts I've been wearing pretty much all week because we're in the middle of summer camp for football, and I've basically just been rotating through 3 of the same shorts. They're the same exact shorts, but I have 3 pairs of them, so I can,
They must be your favorite shorts if you have 3 different pairs of them.
Well, they are, and they're just kind of also what we have. So I do like them, but there's just kind of the one version of the same shorts I have. So that's why I've been wearing them all week. But already through 2 weeks of summer camp, which is crazy. That flew by quickly.
No kidding. Oh, wow. It's I can't believe we're a week away from July.
That is, June just flew by in general. It is a happy hour Friday. I wanted to point out I am drinking hazed juice from Brickstone. I will say this. I do not miss, as I try to put this up to my camera if you're watching on YouTube, I do not necessarily miss Bourbonnais. But one of the things I miss about Bourbonnais is Brickstone Brewery. It became the hangout late. It's where we go to get food, really, and then some great beer. And what I do miss, Will, about Bourbonnais is the first 5-day grind. So when you first reported to camp, there was 5 straight days before you would go home, because we'd always go home on the off days, see our families and things like that.
Right.
And usually from that point on, it would almost be every 2 days or something like that. So the first the first week you got 5 full days there. And that was always fun. You got speaking of dorm rooms, the dorm room life back in the day, even when we then got kicked out of the dorms, went to the hotel, at least we were all at the same hotel. And then you'd grind all day, you'd work all day, you'd have 3 showers a day. And then you go out to dinner. And Brickstone was always a good place. So I wanted to represent their haze juice today on the show.
I like it a lot. What I liked most about training camp is when I was able to break all the rules, and then they added more Will DeWitt rules for fans, hey, no pictures, no videos, don't put it on your socials. And that was always fun when I was able to kind of be that middleman between fan and journalist. But now we have to adhere to a little bit more of what the Bears actually want, which is okay. But definitely those were some good times when I was able to do some of those things.
Our friend JJ Stankovitz shared a video with me and a few others. He sent it via email the other day of John Moon Mullen, who, of course, sadly passed away earlier this week. But Moon did a behind-the-scenes video with what was then CSN Chicago. It's like a 7-minute, just full day in the life of covering the Bears in Bourbonnais. And he uncovered it and sent it to us. And it was like two things. I mean, it was a great just like classic Moon video. All the things his like corny little jokes that he'd throw in there. And the officials happened to be at training camp that day. And anyway, made me miss Bourbonnais a little bit. Made me miss Moon a ton, but also made me miss Bourbonnais just a little bit too.
I'm telling you, Adam, as time goes on, like Lake Forest, it could end up being an incredible experience for fans, media alike. But as nostalgia continues to grow, I think Bourbonnais will be more missed by you than you think right now.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? Here's why it wore off, though, as we kind of veer off on a tangent. That still has to do with the Bears. A lot of times we go into tangents that don't have to do with the Bears. The thing about that Moon video is it just brought me back to all the days that you were talking about before there were all these rules. Like, it was just really chill and casual, and you get to know the players a lot more. And, of course, that's what the team doesn't really want us to do. But so we used to do our interviews outside the cafeteria, and we would eat in the same cafeteria, and you basically had an hour window. Get your lunch, find the players you want to talk to. You had to plan it out perfectly, because if you got your lunch at the wrong time when the player you were looking for was coming in or out, like you'd miss them. But at least it was kind of in your own hands a little bit. Like it was, you had to use some strategery.
Yeah.
But also and Moon makes a great point in that video, which maybe I could figure out a way to share it. I'm not sure. I'll have to check with JJ on that. But makes a good point. He's like, the key is, though, the super secret strategy is to not stop the players as they're going into eating, because you don't want to get in the way of a hungry offensive lineman, right? So go in and eat first, try to catch them on the way out. Now, the one problem with that I would rebuttal back to Moon is there were some savvy veterans on the team, like a Lance Briggs or Julius Peppers all the time. They would sneak out a back door and find a way to not come back through the same entrance where all the media would be parked out in the golf. There would be a line of golf carts.
I was going to say, I think they learned this from Brian Urlacher, because he always did a great job avoiding even fans. Like, instead of going through that tunnel, that walkway with all the fans, like he'd hop on that cart and go all the way around the long way. I mean, I get it. I mean, he is an A+ star in the league in his prime, and if he goes through that, he's probably never getting out, or he looks like an ass by avoiding every single fan that he walks past. So I get as a kid that kind of sucked, because you see him and you hope to meet him, and then you see him up in that cart and you never saw him again until the next practice. But
I'll say this, to your point there on that, Will, like, I can respect a guy just like, I don't want to talk to the media today. Like, you can't do it every day. You're having a bad day. You had a bad everybody, I can respect the fact that they're all human beings.
I was going to say, we're human. Yeah.
They have their lives too. So that doesn't bother me. It bothers me far more like this team controlled era where they're just like, we're going to give you this player once every 2 weeks, and you'll get them when we bring them to the podium. You know what I mean? Like, if it's up to the player to just kind of decide, I'm going to go off today, like, cool, and also if they said no to you, hey, got a few minutes? No, I got to get to this. Fine. Like, I can live with that. It's like, it's just far worse when you don't really have any control over the situation. Like, there's literally days we go there, we don't know who we're talking to that day.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard to plan content.
Yeah. And you think that a team would want the people covering the team to have not as much access, like total access, but a decent amount enough to create compelling enough content to get fans excited and bought into the team for that season or even the off season. I never understood keeping media arm's length away when they do a great job of keeping an audience engaged around their product, which is Chicago Bears football.
Anyway, that turned into like some complaining by me on
That's
rules
okay.
and stuff. But the point is that back in the day, there were not many rules. You could grab guys, you could walk around campus, you could stand right next to the field at practice. I actually don't mind being in the stands. You actually tend to get a better view a little bit higher up, but you used to be able to stand right there on the field. And anyway, those were the good old days of Bourbonnais. That was a long way of saying, Will, the things that you were kind of predicting I'll miss about Bourbonnais, they kind of already went away by the end of it, if that makes sense.
Yep. No, like, that does make a lot of sense.
Like the fun parts have sort of already been sucked out before they eventually move. So if all that stuff's going to be sucked out, like I'm perfectly fine with being 10 minutes down the road from where I live.
Yep. Nope. I totally understand completely. So anyway, happy hours, happy times.
Yes. No, it is happy time. Unfortunately,
yeah, we look at the notes, right?
Not so happy topic because we have arrest number 2 during the offseason for the Chicago Bears. Matthew Adams in contention for that Sam linebacker spot, arrested and charged with misdemeanor illegal gun possession and possessing a high-capacity magazine and metal-piercing bullets. Those are kind of the details of what happened in Chicago. That's where he was arrested, and that high-capacity magazine, metal-piercing bullets, not legal in the Chicago limits. And then he also had a license for the gun he had, but it was not an Illinois license. So the interesting thing, and this was all based on some reporting, I was reading about this in the Sun-Times, so I give the Sun-Times credit. I'm sure many have covered it at this point, but police found the gun and the ammo while searching for a car that had been reported stolen, and that's where they basically the police got involved with Adams. That was the reason, but Adams said it was his car, and that doesn't seem to be an issue because he wasn't charged with anything there.
Right.
So, you know what? Like these are... It's not really something to joke around about, but what we always say at this time of year, when we get in this dead period of the NFL, really the only time news breaks is when it's unfortunately somebody getting arrested.
Yeah, it's some sort of bad news. You're not going to find good news in late June for a Bears player out there unless you're doing some good, but that usually gets not nearly as much publicity as what we're talking about here today. It's just unfortunate that, like you said, this is the second arrest. Luckily, it's these are misdemeanors. We're not having players commit felonies or anything of that nature. And to me, it's more of bureaucracy when it comes to like paperwork. If he doesn't have an Illinois license, but he had it, I'm assuming maybe an Indiana license if he was playing with the Colts for all that time. Again, I'm not going to say where it was because we really don't have that information. Nevertheless, though, it just kind of puts a damper on things here. As you said, he is someone who is or was or still is in contention for that Sam linebacker spot. And I think more importantly, he was brought in to be a special teams ace, someone that had PFF's highest graded special teams grade last year in the entire NFL, both in terms of like coverage and also just blocking units. He's just someone who's out there in the third phase a ton. And I'm sure Coach Eberflus, with all the experience with him, was hoping that he would come here and be able to provide that. And he knows Adams more than probably anybody in the building right now, except some of the other defensive staff that he brought in from Indianapolis. So I'll be interested to see if he gets the Byron Pringle treatment where they just kind of let it ride and let the law take care of itself and let the team handle it internally, which I'm sure they're looking into right now.
Yeah, I that's the part of this I find interesting is that both players who are arrested are kind of guys from the new regime. You know what I mean? Like, so Pringle's somebody that Ryan Poles knew well from Kansas City and was a free agent and said, okay, let's bring him over. And in this case, Adams has previously played for Eberflus in Indianapolis. And usually that's, you're vouching for a player, Now, that doesn't mean that player might not come with baggage. I mean, of course, there was a time where Vic Fangio vouched for Ray McDonald. And how did that go?
True.
And that was certainly, not that we have to get on like a comparing arrest type of situation, but obviously Ray McDonald's transgressions and the things that he had gone through and been accused of many, many times were far more documented, more aware, and worse, quite frankly, in what was happening than either the things that Matt Adams or Byron Pringle have been involved in here. But it's still just kind of an interesting twist to this happening. Again, like you said, I don't know that this is something that's going to, amount to anything, quite frankly, or even discipline from the league or the Bears. Nonetheless, not the type of headline you want popping up in the newspaper in late June for your team. So,
yep, that's where I'm going to keep it personally. I don't think I have anything further to add unless more details come in the future. We can update folks on that. But as of right now, I think it just stands where it stands, Adam.
All right, let's keep it rolling then as we continue on with our previews for the 2020 season. The Minnesota Vikings are on deck today. They went 8-9 in the 2021 season, second in the NFC North, and they are the Bears' Week 5 opponent as we've gone in order. So if you missed any of these earlier this week, make sure you go back, check out those podcasts or check out the videos on YouTube. You can find them there as we went through the schedule so far. But the Vikings, that 8-9 record was good enough for second place in the NFC North. And, of course, they have had some major changes. We'll talk about the front office, coaching staff in a second. But in terms of the roster, they managed to get Zadarius Smith from the Packers. Smith went through the weird thing where originally agreed to terms with the Ravens, ended up then in Minnesota instead. A linebacker I really liked last year, Jordan Hicks, who was on the Cardinals, and it really just kind of had a big season. Remember seeing him when he came to Soldier Field with the Cardinals, and that was somebody I thought the Bears should maybe look at, but he ends up in Minnesota. In terms of losses, some names you probably know, but I don't know how big these losses really are, but Tyler Conklin at tight end, Mason Cole center, and Xavier Woods has played there for a while in Minnesota as one of their safeties. They go after, remember, they moved all around in the NFL draft early on. They end up with Lewis Seen from Georgia. They, like the Bears, went defensive back with their first 2 picks. They also got Andrew Booth from Clemson. They drafted Ed Ingram, the guard from LSU, and Brian Asamoah, linebacker from Oklahoma. But Will, the big change is really with the team is they also have a new GM and a new head coach as they completely went through an overhaul like the Bears did.
Yeah, no, they did. There's a lot of parallels. You mentioned they went defensive backs with their first 2 picks. So that's a parallel, first year head coach and Kevin O'Connell. They brought in Adam. Do you got that name down? Because I do not. I've tried so many times for the GM.
Do
you nickname him?
No, of course, now you're putting me on the spot. I'm like completely get me started and then I know it.
Yeah, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
It's Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is what it is.
There we go.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who the Bears also looked at. And then, of course, like the big twist was, remember, Ryan Poles was supposed to get on a plane to go to Minnesota.
Yep.
And because they wanted to talk to him too. And the Bears said, nope, we're not letting you get on that plane. You stay here. You're our GM. So what could have been, perhaps, maybe they would have had opposite GMs. And really, in terms of style, these GMs are completely different because Poles is definitely a scouting background, player type guy. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is more on the analytical, almost business side of things. But is obviously impressed enough throughout his time, and he came over from the Cleveland Browns. He got out of there at the right time.
Sure did.
And he goes and also goes in a different direction as they hire an offensive head coach, whereas Poles says, no, I'm going to go defense, zig when people are zagging or zag when people are zigging, however you want to put it. So it'll be very interesting for these division rivals to see where the direction of their franchises go here in the next 5 years. And I guess we'll get our first sneak peek in week 5 of this season.
Yeah, I feel like, Adam, every single game that we've talked about this week, we find these trickle effects from the offseason, like the ripples that had, either decisions the Bears made and how it affected the other team or vice versa. And the Vikings with Ryan Poles is one that I think we'll be looking at for, years to come to see how that decision panned out for really both teams and the ripple effect they had on the Vikings by not being able to even get Poles in the building to talk to him. And when I look at this entire offseason, and then we talked about the draft, and you mentioned moving around, but one thing that still leaves me a little, I guess, befuddled is the Vikings trading with the Lions and the Packers, like sticking with the NFC North, allowing the Lions to get Jameson Williams, really good wide receiver. The Packers got Christian Watson, another one as well. So allowing them to move up to get some of these skilled players, again, impacts this entire division for them to move down, accumulate additional picks. So that's one of those, I guess, big things right now. But in terms of the changes, we brought in an offensive coach in Kevin O'Connell from the Rams. He has experience working with Kirk Cousins in Washington. Can he get him playing better, or I guess more impactful in a scheme more like what the Rams had a year ago? They have playmakers. We know it. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. We mentioned the loss of Tyler Conklin, who had a really good year, 61 catches for 600 yards and 3 touchdowns a year ago. They're leaning on Irv Smith Jr., who missed all of last season at tight end. So that's maybe one of my question marks on offense. And then when you look at the defense, they're going through a pretty major change, going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Again, the opposite of what the Bears are doing right now. And they have Eric Kendricks already at linebacker. So their other inside guy is going to be Jordan Hicks. I think that's a really good linebacking tandem. And then Zadarius Smith, as we mentioned, staying in the division. We almost got him out, and I'm still aggravated by the fact we're going to see him 2 times a year, and pairing him with Danielle Hunter, who I know has been dealing with injuries. But if he gets back to close to that 2018, 2019 form, I think they have what it takes to make a successful transition here from a 4-3 to a 3-4 and be a pretty decent defense this season.
Yeah, and there are some coaching connections here that we should tell you about because Ed Donatel ended up as the Vikings defense coordinator. As you mentioned, that switch to the 3-4, which is a big change for the Vikings, a very big change from what we're used to seeing from the Vikings when the Bears match up. But Ed Donatel getting that opportunity to kind of have full control over the defense. He's always been under Vic Fangio, and now he has full reign of that defense, but probably going to be running that Vic Fangio style defense that has been so popular. They also, do you know who their assistant head coach is?
I do not, off the top of my head, no.
Mike Pettin.
Interesting.
Continues to make the rounds in the NFC North.
Jeez.
Yeah, so remember he was on the Bears staff there as like just one of those senior analyst positions. I'm also looking at the rest. Rory Anderson, who's their assistant D-back safeties coach, he used to be on the Bears staff too. And the Curtis Motkins, he's a running backs coach. So, these and Chris Rumpf ended up as their defensive line coach. I missed that. So Chris Rumpf is because he was the Bears defensive line coach last year. So
wow, yep.
Some connections there with the Bears, and just in general, the contrast in the styles that the Vikings ended up going with, both the front office, the head coach going with a young offensive-minded coach from the Sean McVay tree. In a lot of ways, the Vikings are following the hot fads right now, right? Like Sean McVay on offense, Vic Fangio on defense, and the Bears are doing the opposite. Well, I shouldn't say so much on offense because they are just doing the Shanahan outside zone stuff. But the fact that they went with a defensive head coach, and not only that, but in one where they're actually kind of going back in time. They're hopping in their own DeLorean to go back to the Lovie Smith days on defense. It'll be very, very fascinating to see how these things play out.
It really is. And I know they've called it up in Minnesota like a competitive rebuild is their term. So that's why they're bringing in high-quality free agents, as we mentioned, with Jordan Hicks. Harrison Phillips, really good defensive lineman coming out of Buffalo last year, too. One of the better run stuffers inside. He's good at getting after quarterbacks. Again, he's going to be a big force in that 3-4 transition that they're going through. But whether you're comparing first-year GMs, first-year head coaches, again, even the fact that they both went cornerback safety with their first 2 picks to kind of bolster that secondary and, add some youth there. I mean, they have Harrison Smith and now Lewis Seen in the, playing at safety, and then Patrick Peterson and Andrew Booth over there at cornerback too. That's an interesting mix between really good veterans and high upside rookies that they have there. That, again, if that strikes, this can be a very, very good defense, which makes, I guess, the weakness of this Vikings team that offensive line. And if, I know how that feels in Chicago to have question marks up front. It's not a good feeling.
Well, the Vikings always seem to have questions there with their O-line. We will show you some of the PointsBet numbers here in a moment on the Minnesota Vikings, get an idea of where they stack up in the league right now, at least in the gambling market. But the best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up. And if you do that right now, you get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. And that's not it, because if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. That's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making a $50 or more first-time deposit at PointsBet. Any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com. We will help you out. If you happen to see an edge in the game you're watching, or if your favorite team seems primed for a comeback, well, go to PointsBet. Don't just watch the game. Bet along with it live. They have more live betting, more live markets, and faster live cash outs. So download the PointsBet app right now and use that promo code CHGO once the game starts. Don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services.
And I have to tell everyone about OWYN, which stands for Only What You Need. OWYN is a 100% plant-based protein shake that gives you nutrition that works as hard as you do. And all their products are free of artificial ingredients, allergen-friendly, no gluten, no dairy, and they're easily digestible. I've mentioned a few times this week, but I really like taking OWYN after my workouts, because in the past, whenever I tried different protein shakes, it makes my stomach quite upset. And luckily with OWYN, due to the fact that they have no artificial ingredients, they're easily digestible with the lack of gluten or dairy, and allergen friendly, which I think my issue is allergies. I'm just glad that I have a protein shake that works for me, and honestly has 30 grams of protein. It tastes great. I have the chocolate peanut butter right now in my fridge for a workout later today. And it's just one that I definitely would go to right away after every single workout. And we first heard about OWYN from Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields, who follows a plant-based diet. OWYN and CHGO have partnered up to give you an awesome offer. You can get 20% off your first purchase at liveowyn.com with the code CHGO20. That's CHGO20 at liveowyn.com. That gets you 20% off your first purchase. So join me and Justin Fields and try OWYN. Only what you need. Oh, Adam, you are muted for some reason by chance.
There I am.
There you go.
There I am.
Hello.
100% my own fault. That's what happens when you mute yourself and then don't turn it back on.
That tends to be a problem, but you're back.
I'm back. Do want to mention real quick that it's been a busy day. If you missed anything, we got a couple things you should check out. The Blackhawks have a new head coach.
Ooh.
So make sure you check out the CHGO Blackhawks podcast for their breakdown of Luke Richardson, who comes over from the Montreal Canadiens. And then the CHGO Red Stars podcast had a great discussion earlier on the impact of today's big news of Supreme Court shooting down Roe versus Wade, the impact that could have on women's sports. So if you want to check that out, I highly encourage it. I was watching some of it earlier, and it was just a really intelligent discussion. So those are a couple podcasts there for you. We have you covered in all areas here at CHGO today and every day. Make sure you know that. And we do say this is a happy hour Friday. So, the rule we have on this show is that when the CHGO Bears podcast starts at 1:00, that is your that's your official time where you can just stop working, maybe open up a beverage, hang out. And if your boss has any problem with that, tell them to go to allchgo.com, become a member, and then they'll understand everything a little bit better.
I like it. That's fun. Now, I'm sticking with the H2O here today, but next Friday I'm gonna have to step up my game a bit, I think.
All right. Where were we? PointsBet. Minnesota Vikings. We have some numbers for you on the Minnesota Vikings and where they stand this year. So the numbers you can get right now on PointsBet, Vikings are plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl, which puts them 19th across the entire league. But, and this is kind of maybe our first good example of, how the league's kind of skewing towards the AFC with all the talented quarterbacks they're 8th in the NFC at plus 2,000. So, I mean, that puts them as a potential playoff contender right outside the playoffs since there's 7 playoff seeds to go get, at least in terms of how the markets look at them right now. In terms of winning the NFC North, no big surprise here. They are second at plus 275 to win the NFC North. The official over-under at 8.5 wins. If you want to bet the over, it was they're kind of skewing towards the over because it was minus 130, under plus 110.
Yeah, I don't know what I would take right now. Maybe the under. Like I said, they could be really good, but as you were talking and I was thinking about that 3-4 defense transition, they have a lot of good defenders on that team. But if I remember correctly, it took the Bears a year or two to really kind of get that thing firing on all cylinders, or at least playing well as they kind of overhauled some players and really just learning it. It's a complex defense and it takes some time.
Well, I think it really, this is a team that's probably going to score a lot of points, I think, and rely on their offense a little bit. That connection that Kevin O'Connell has with Kirk Cousins, the fact that they extended him again is just still so amazing to me.
Amazing, like in an awe-inspiring, what the hell you doing kind of way.
Yeah, because it's like, and it's not just one of these extensions where it's like, they can get out of it in a year. No, it's these guaranteed contracts that Kirk Cousins keeps getting. I mean, shout out to Mike McCartney. Probably the only agent I'll ever shout out and continue to give him amazing credit because he just keeps getting these contracts for Kirk Cousins. It's insane. Good for him. Good for Kirk Cousins. But meanwhile, they have a ton of good weapons too. And I saw Justin Jefferson recently quoted, I think he was on the NFL Network, saying, "Hey, we're not a run-first offense anymore." Okay. That's either something that's going to make that offense even scarier or expose Kirk Cousins more. Because that's the thing. Like, I think that's the frustration with the Vikings and their Vikings fans, and they have a lot of frustration up there in Minnesota, trust me, about all their teams, because they tend to lose in heartbreaking ways. But they're not, like, as an offense, they'd always be good, but they just couldn't quite get over the hump because Kirk Cousins has his own limitations. And I've always kind of wondered, like, if you're going to put Kirk Cousins, though, in a position where all of a sudden it's a pass-first offense, I don't know that makes him better.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I mean, at least on the podcast, I've talked about that for years about, like, you want to put the game in Kirk Cousins' hands. Like, that's like the game plan to beat the Vikings more times than not. But if O'Connell can't put him in positions to succeed, he has the weapons to get it done. I saw a stat and I forgot where it came from, but it's still in my mind. And I'll just share it now that with the Rams last year, their top 2 targets on average, more than 4 targets per game combined between them than Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen did last year. So just imagine, like, Jefferson getting 3 more touches a game, Thielen getting 2 to 3 more touches a game like that. If they get the football and they get those chances, like, they are playmakers and they can beat defenses. So them getting those extra looks could be potentially dangerous. If, again, the big if is if Cousins can step up to the plate here.
Yeah. All right. Well, in terms of this game in week 5, where do you stand?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember what I said.
You're allowed to change it. I mean,
I know.
I purposely immediately forget the schedule predictions I make when the schedule comes out.
Fair point.
It's such a ridiculous time of year to be making predictions on the schedule.
I feel like the Bears can win this game, but I'm going to have them losing a close one here, at least for today's episode. And again, we'll do our official ones closer to the actual season. But I feel like this offense is going to be dangerous. And this defense, as much as I fear that they could have not fear for me, but fear for them, that they can have a slow time kind of transitioning, they still have a lot of good playmakers on that side of the ball too. And I think I have the Bears going 3-1 so far. So we need to kind of get back down to earth a little bit. So I'll drop to 3-2 and lose our second in the division, which that's not good.
Yeah, I think I had the Vikings winning and will continue to have the Vikings winning this one. I think ultimately it's although I will say if this is a situation where like too much is riding on Kirk Cousins and they're kind of passing too much, the Bears have the defense, I think, that can kind of sit back and wait for him to make a mistake and create those takeaways. And all of a sudden you do that, you win the turnover margin in this game, you have a good chance to win. So I agree with you that it's a very winnable game. But I think we'll learn a lot about the Vikings in the first 4 weeks and have a much better handle kind of when this game actually gets there. Let's not forget they have Dalvin Cook though. They can be as pass happy as they want to be, but I'd probably give the ball to Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook just never has scared me, at least in terms of like the head-to-head matchups. Like I can see him, kill me in fantasy more weeks than not. But when he goes up against the Bears, at least historically, they've been able to bottle him up pretty well.
Well, and that was the one thing about the Bears in the last, 5-6 years. Like they always were pretty stout up front. They had good defensive lines and could typically slow down your running game. And I think that's where it started to get frustrating last year because all of a sudden, that I would always say the defense is leaking, and it's usually in the run game, and it would just kind of leak. And those all of a sudden those running backs were getting more and more and more. And I'm worried about this defensive transition, specifically on that D line with what they've lost, and not having Akeem Hicks out there in games like this, where it always seemed like he would show up against the Vikings too. That's where I somewhat worry about them being able to slow down the Vikings running game, even if they are trying to put more on Kirk Cousins' plate. And meanwhile, that's a pretty good transition to today's Bears grade, the player that we are looking at from last year, who was on that defensive line. That would be the transition we're talking about. Khyiris Tonga is the player we're taking a look at today. As a 7th rounder, had a pretty impressive rookie season. And at least in my own grades, as I looked at it through last season, the game everybody wants to forget in Cleveland, of course, offensively, was actually Khyiris Tonga's best game, kind of a coming out party for him in week 3. Of course, he was drafted as a nose tackle. He played in a 30 front at BYU. That's the position that he was drafted to be and play with the Chicago Bears. So the big question here in training camp is, can he be a one technique in a 4-3 defense? Honestly, I don't think we know the answer to that question right now. I think so. I think he can hold his own as a backup, but does he have that quickness to shoot a gap, get upfield? That remains to be seen. And then, I do have to wonder, Will, if it's not working out, is he a player who had a good enough rookie season that's still young enough? Remember, he's not that young. He was like a 25-year-old rookie last year. So do you think about if you can get anything for him, trading him, if it's just not necessarily because there's anything wrong with him as a player, but just trying to find a defense that fits his game a little bit more? Because I could see a team that runs a 3-4 wanting a depth player like that who had a pretty good rookie season and can still get better.
Yeah, I mean, his true fit is at that zero tech, right up there, holding the nose, eating those double teams. I think I mentioned this last Friday was when I talked about Tonga for my preview, but he is someone that, or actually could have been early this week. It's been a hell of a week and a half here, Adam. But no, he is someone, like you said, maybe if you can get something back, it's better than just cutting him and saying you're just not a fit and allowing him to go sign elsewhere. If you can get anything back, and heck, he played well enough. If you get a 6 out of him for a 7th round pick that you didn't even have any say in, that's something. But the fact, again, he only had 1 quarterback pressure last year and 1 tackle for a loss. Despite how well he played, making plays in the backfield really wasn't his thing. I know they weren't asking him to do it. So the fact, like, you will have to wait and see if he can be that guy, because in this defense, playing that one tech, like, he will, like you said, he needs to shoot gaps and be able to make plays in the backfield, getting after quarterbacks and stopping those runs. And when I saw the best game against Cleveland, I had to double check my preview, and that's what I had too. So I feel really good about that.
Yeah. By the way, the grade I had on him last year came out as a 1.38, which counts as a fringe starter, which is basically what he is. And that game, just for reference, against the Cleveland Browns, he came out with a 5 in that game, which is really, really good. And then the rest of a lot of it was just kind of due to limited playing time too. He wasn't really thrown in there with, high snap counts, because even when he was in a position where he might have been playing more for Eddie Goldman, the nose tackles were coming off the field a lot in sub packages and on third downs and things like that. So, but I like Khyiris Tonga a lot. Maybe it'll work out on this team. I really don't know. I think they got to know when the pads come on, and we'll start to get a better.
You can't tell in OTAs now in shells and shorts, right?
So, I think we'll find out. And then I'm not trying to start any like trade rumors. I'm just wondering, as I identify a roster, I'm like, if it's not working out in this defense, or he doesn't provide just quite enough value as a one technique to shoot gaps, to me, he seems like the perfect candidate. Because, like, let's say you could even get a 6th-round pick out of him. Well, you drafted him in the 7th. You got one good year out of him. He's not a great fit. Like, that's a win. And I don't know that you can get something. He may be a player type trade. Like, you go player for player in August. That's sometimes when you see those types of moves, because remember, these teams are always scouting talent on other rosters in the preseason. And there might be somebody you want to claim off waivers. You don't know you're going to be able to get them, so you just throw in a late-round pick to just secure that player. It does happen. There is some player movement in August. So, and then again, he may just be just fine as a one technique and be a great backup or rotational player in this defense. It just remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And if I remember correctly, he had a pretty decent preseason a year ago. That's where fans were wondering, like, do we really need Eddie Goldman? Tonga may be able to just kind of take over from here. And if he does have a decent preseason, which maybe would be a better case that he can fit. I was going to try to talk up his trade value, but if he's playing well, then I guess it's working and there's no need to worry about it.
Hey, if you enjoy CHGO, one way to help us continue to grow is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up. Not only are you going to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you will receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. This is one of the ones you can get. The Sky shirt, one of my favorites. I mean, we just unveiled 3 new T-shirts this week too, including one of the Chicago skyline, the White Sox one that says Southside Bias, which I'm gonna definitely have to get one of those. And then there was a Cubs one as well. And in case you missed it, online sign up is available in Illinois right now for PointsBet. You can download the PointsBet app right now, register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. And when you do that, you'll be signing up with the fastest sports book, easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. What are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. All right, Will, close us out this week with your Friday player preview.
Yeah, Friday player preview. Moving over to wide receivers, and we talked about last year's 7th-round pick. Let's look at a 6th-round pick from a year ago, and let's talk about Daz Newsome, someone that when the Bears drafted and how the wide receiver room was kind of built a year ago. I was excited to see what kind of role maybe he can carve in for himself, but then during off-season workouts and practice, he broke his collarbone in June. That required surgery. He had to start training camp on the PUP list. And then from there, he just had a hard time really being able to make much of an impression on that coaching staff. We know they had a hard time, or I guess did not like to play young rookies. He only appeared in 3 games last year, 5 targets, 2 catches, 23 yards. So very, very limited sample size for Daz Newsome. But his best game, if you want to talk about that, was the season finale. He had 1 catch, 13 yards, but really where he made his impact, there was special teams with 47 punt return yards on 4 attempts. He also had a tackle in kickoff coverage. And if he's going to make this roster this year, he needs to be able to prove he can be a special teams contributor, both as a punt returner, as well as someone like playing a gunner on punt coverage or even on kickoff coverage like he did a year ago. So when I look at Daz, my biggest question is, can he make a strong enough impression? At least this year, being healthy, he has a chance, unlike a year ago. But the Bears bring in Byron Pringle, Velus Jones Jr., who also thrive inside, which is where Daz Newsome's best fit is. You have to wonder if there is a path to make this roster, at least as a receiver. Punt returner, I would say there's a better chance for him to do that. He did average over 12 yards per punt return last year. Again, very limited sample size to kind of draw off, but I know that was like top 3 in the league, if that was something that he was able to sustain for an entire season. So for me, when I look at Daz, obviously not much of a chance last year, has a very tough uphill battle this year. I don't know if he makes the active roster. I can see him sitting on the practice squad yet for another season, but I do recall Nick was mentioning him a couple times in your practice recap episodes and making some sort of, I guess, presence felt, which for him is what he needs to continue to be doing.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's going to be tough for him, man. I just, especially because the special teams value is huge. The return value might still be there, but then they went out and they drafted Velus Jones and they drafted Treston Ebner, guys who can also contribute in the return game. They still have Khalil Herbert. You know, I don't know. I think that it might be a little too clogged there. I could see him ending up on the practice squad, just sort of as depth in that area. You know, in terms of as a receiver, I didn't necessarily see with my own eyes what Nick saw. That's not saying it didn't happen. I could have missed some plays here and there, but I've been kind of waiting for, I'm going back to last training camp too. And something I always talk about is first impressions, how quickly guys kind of create that buzz. I just feel like in Daz's case, a lot of the buzz is from where they got him in the draft, kind of the draft hype. I don't know how much of it is based on, him having a stellar training camp or anything like that. He's not somebody that I have been writing down that number a ton and been like, right. Oh yeah, this guy needs to get out there more. So doesn't mean it can't still happen. The Bears certainly had the need at wide receiver, but I'm still kind of sitting here and waiting.
Yeah. When they brought in Tajay Sharp and Dante Pettis, I think that really made it almost insurmountable for Newsome to make this active roster after training camp this year. Last year was very quiet. I know they took it really slow with his collarbone, and I thought they were just trying to find a way to stash him on the practice squad, and it just never really came to fruition for him to actually come up to the active roster, make a real impact. And unless training camp and preseason really shows out, it's going to be again, almost impossible, I think, for him to make this active roster. And that's what I put for my prediction. And again, I have a little bit more details on allchgo.com and the article I wrote for this, but I feel like he's going to be destined for the practice squad after it's all said and done.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'd probably have to agree with you there too. All right, Will, thanks so much for filling in all week. It was a lot of fun. Great job, especially all the info you brought on both the players and also these opponent previews we've been doing. Appreciate all the research. And you'll be back Tuesday. Nick will be back Monday, so he'll be back next week. And we'll have you on the show. We'll do the 3-man weave on Tuesday's show.
Sounds great. Back to a typical routine for a little bit of time here. I'm excited, and thank you for having me on all week, Adam. It's been a lot of fun. Like I said in the top, in studio, the DeLorean ride is special, and I didn't know you had one of those in the alleyway, and I'm glad you trusted me enough to hop in there with you, and we didn't screw up the timeline all too much. I hope not. Although today maybe is a sign that we maybe messed up a little bit. But at the same time, like I said, it was a lot of fun hopping on, and look forward to Tuesday and getting back to the grind. These have been fun episodes.
Yeah. I had a fun week. I know that. Thank you for everybody watching, listening, however you consume the podcast. Please subscribe on YouTube. Please hit that like button, notification so you know when we go live. And if you listen as a podcast, rate and review the pod. We appreciate you doing that too. However you consume the show, we appreciate that. And remember, check out our friends at PointsBet. Use that code CHGO. Check out the merch at allchgo.com. Get those memberships. We'll have more content coming your way as we lead up to training camp. Hope everybody enjoys their weekend. We will be back on Monday. We'll talk to you then at 1 o'clock.